It was a war crime that wasn't a crime. A moment of chivalry in the most unchivalrous of wars, an act of mercy that backfired spectacularly. And it all started with a distress call, not from a warship, but from a lifeboat, picked up by a German U-boat commander in the middle of the Atlantic. I'm Ibnul J. Farabi, and this is Flashpoints, the wars that shaped us. It's September 12, 1942. The RMS Laconia, a former British ocean liner turned troopship, is steaming off the coast of West Africa. On board are nearly 3,000 souls, British soldiers, civilians, and, critically, 1,800 Italian prisoners of war, guarded by Polish soldiers. Just after dinner, a torpedo from U-156, commanded by Captain Lieutenant Werner Hartenstein, slams into her side. The Laconia begins to sink, fast. As the ship goes down, Hartenstein brings U-156 close to the surface to assess the damage. And that's when he hears it. Not the explosions, but the voices. Hundreds of them, crying out in the dark water. Italian voices. Men from Germany's Axis ally, drowning alongside their enemies. Hartenstein is faced with an impossible choice. He is a hunter, trained to sink ships and slip away. The sea around him is filled with survivors who, hours before, were his targets. And he makes a decision that would shock the world. He decides to rescue them. He surfaces and immediately begins pulling survivors from the water. His narrow deck becomes a crammed refuge for nearly 200 men. But he quickly realizes the scale is too vast. So he does something unprecedented. In plain language, he broadcasts an open message on an international distress frequency. He gives his position and pleads for help from any ship, promising safe passage to any rescue vessel. He even flies a large Red Cross flag next to his Nazi naval ensign. For a brief moment, the brutal logic of the Battle of the Atlantic is suspended, and the Allies hear him. But they don't believe him. They assume it's a trap, a ruse to lure another ship into an ambush. Meanwhile, the situation grows more surreal. Other U-boats are summoned to the scene. Soon, a small flotilla of German submarines, with lifeboats in tow and survivors covering their decks, is crawling across the ocean. They are even joined by Vichy French warships sailing from Africa. It is perhaps the most bizarre humanitarian armada in history, led by the men who caused the disaster. Then, the flashpoint. An American B-24 Liberator bomber, based in Ascension Island, spots U-156. The pilot sees the submarine, but he also sees the lifeboats, the hundreds of people in the water, the clear Red Cross flag. He radios his base for instructions. The order he receives is chillingly simple and definitive. Sink the sub. The bomber attacks, dropping depth charges. One lands directly among the lifeboats being towed behind U-156. Werner Hartenstein, forced to dive to save his own boat and crew, has no choice but to cut the tow lines, abandoning the survivors once more. The rescue operation is shattered. The attack sends a brutal message. No mercy, no exceptions. The incident becomes a secret order from Admiral Donitz himself, the Laconia Order. Henceforth, U-boats were forbidden from rescuing survivors. The war beneath the waves would now be fought with utter ruthlessness. So what do we make of this? Was Hartenstein a war criminal who became a humanitarian, or a soldier whose moment of conscience was crushed by the machine of total war? The Laconia Incident sits in that grim gray zone. It exposed the fragile, almost absurd possibility of mercy, and then demonstrated, decisively, why such mercy could not survive. It formalized the inhumanity of the submarine war, ensuring that from that day forward, survivors would be left to the sea. It was the moment the last vestige of nightly combat at sea died, not with a whimper, but with the roar of American depth charges and a German commander's terrible, failed gamble. For Flashpoints, I'm Ibnul J. Farabi. This is a Light Knot Studios production. Find more at https://www.lightknotstudios.com.